All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here, and then we'll start the show. Oh, we got spinning wheels there. All right, there we go. 1 and 2. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday evening, the 2nd of July. Happy early 4th of July, everyone, and time for Building the Broncos. I am Nick, joined by Carl. Carl, how you doing? What's good? How's training going?
I'm good. I got a bunch of steps in today, getting the pack on, getting it all kind of situated a little bit, trying to get stuff in there to make sure I know what I'm gonna all have in it and what I can and can't take. And so it's a little overwhelming, but at the same time, very excited for all that's going ahead and getting this first major hike of my career out of the way at 38.
Yeah, I've talked to Scott before. I think he's interested in maybe coming out and doing Rainier next year. So we'll see about that. That's a different level of hiking and climbing. But yeah, that'll be good. I don't know if Scott. I think you've been gone a little bit, but Carl's going to join me, and we're going to go climb Mount Whitney in California here in a couple weeks. So maybe there'll be a couple vacancies for Building the Broncos if anybody wants to throw their hat in. After that, we'll see how it goes. But it'll be fun, and we're hanging out. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, Scott says he's jealous. Yeah, well, we got to get you out here too, Scott. It'll be a lot of fun. Let's say hello to people in the chat as time is starting here. We got William. Oh, we got David Mickelrath first. Super chat coming in. $5 super chat saying, "Good evening, Broncos country. Nick, Carl, and Deacon Scott." He says, hashtag 12 and 5, hashtag Buckham 3 times, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Denver Broncos for life, hashtag Bo knows, hashtag Knicks for 6, hashtag Bo leave. Good to see you, David. Hope you're doing well. Happy early 4th of July for you. Let's keep our digits, right? That's not just for David. That's for everybody. Let's be smart with our fireworks out there. I always think there's a tweet I see every time around this year. Like, there are many Americans right now who don't know this is the last week they're going to have all 10 of their fingers. And that always sticks with me. So make smart choices out there, folks.
Yeah, I'm thankful my kids are small enough. They're not wanting to get into the big ones quite yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still there's those moments where something shoots up and your kids are not in the right position. My son's not always the greatest at understanding how things are working around him. He's kind of oblivious to his surroundings at times. And so, yeah, I've always got to have a, eye in the back of my head, making sure he's not taking off running towards the firework on accident. And had my daughter do a little dance when one went off by her feet yesterday. So, yeah, definitely be safe out there, but enjoy the freedom out there too.
Yeah, my grumpy old man take is that it's a little much. It feels like the last 5-8 years is like ramped up a lot. And now I'm hyper focused on like wildfires and stuff. And the fireworks cause massive wildfires every year. So please don't set the forest on fire, or Smokey and I are going to come beat you up. So let's say hello to people. Chat, good to see you, David. We got William in the house saying, good, I want them to pile it on to make them play mad. Yeah, we're talking about the PFF ranking of the Denver Broncos defensive line. That includes edge rushers and interior defensive line. We'll get in that a little bit. David Youngkin, David, I thought you were taking a sabbatical there, but really good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Been thinking about you every day. So good to have you in here. And even if you think PFF is trash and it's even, regardless, other important stuff, glad to have you in here. We got Mike S. saying, what's up, Carl, Nick, Dylan, Scott, and Broncos country. Always good to see you. And David also says, again, Broncos haven't done anything in years, but the Broncos could go 17-0, and PFF and the media wouldn't have crap to say. I think if Denver went 17-0, people would be talking about them, and there'd be a lot of Bo Nix excitement, assuming if you're 17-0. But I get it. I mean, Denver's been irrelevant, and they are very much in the shadow of Patrick Mahomes right now, which makes it even harder.
I think it would be funny to hear the national media people try to figure out how they got this so wrong, or having them go, oh, I believed him. I was the only one that believed him. And then somebody finds like 10 clips of them crapping on the Broncos. That seems to happen every year, where somebody likes to make that claim that they believed in the team that surprised everybody, or the quarterback that became something more than somebody believed that they could be. And so, yeah, you'd see a little bit of mix of that for sure. But if they go 17-0, there's going to be a lot of people hyping up the Broncos for many seasons to come. If you can do that with a rookie quarterback, 50+ plus million in dead money from Russell Wilson, and so many other things, draft picks that they've sold over the last few years. Like I said, something crazy had happened to make that happen. Some players would have to all of a sudden just become Hall of Famers that nobody ever expected could become Hall of Famers.
Things would have to be pretty wild for that to happen. But hey, man, wild things happen for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that you're saying the Broncos, some people will be standing out about, oh, yeah, the Broncos are good. But there'd also be, I bet, some media that'd be like, oh, just wait. This is a false positive. They're going to be terrible. But I mean, I don't know. Well, it's fun to talk the make-believe in July for sure. Michael Bronquillo coming in with the stars and the support. Great to see you, Michael. He says, good evening, Nick and Carl on building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Always great to see you. And yeah, David, again, talking about glad to have you here and hanging out with us. He just goes back to the hospital and has some more of his, have some of the liver removed. So hopefully everything works out well there. Appreciate you coming and hanging out with us and really sending you good vibes like Conga says here and Mike S. and everybody. Roy Osborne, the guy. Roy, great to see you. Roy says, hey there, Nick, Carl, and Scott and all of Broncos country. Always love Roy coming in. Daniel Berry Sports. Great to see you. Colin, I'll say we're all pulling for you, David. Absolutely, man. Really, absolutely. I know Ernie likes to say go Broncos only, but also go Dave. We appreciate you. Shiloh coming in says, evening, fellas. Excited to see what the defense can do with an aggressive attacking front. I'm expecting a 5-year high in turnovers from this defense on our way to 10 wins. That would be great. I mean, turnovers are pretty volatile week to week. But if you have a good defense, you do get a lot of turnovers. They're also very predicated on having a competent offense, something that Denver has mostly not had. Last year was the most competent offense they've had since 2014, maybe. I mean, I think that's probably right. So 10 years, but hopefully even better this year. We'll see. There's so many moving parts. Rookie quarterback probably starting, but in theory, I'm excited for the attacking defense. I'm also excited that it sounds like they're giving Vance Joseph the schematic reins, which I know definitely, antenna up for that one, tail up, but not trying to smush together Vic Fangio with Ejiro Evero with Vance Joseph. No, Vance, you got to run what Vance wants to do. Hopefully Jim Leonard can help too. But in theory, should like the more aggressive attacking front. I'm just a little bit concerned what that means on the back end of the defense.
I always get very nervous whenever they say, hey, we're going to try to do a lot of what we've done in years past, but with a new coach. Like the new coach is going to adapt to the old system. Rarely does that work because that coach has his ideas of how he wants to attack, how he thinks he can use those players. And when you're asking them to do things that he's not usually doing as a coach for 20 plus years, whatever it may be, it just kind of setting the whole system up for failure in that way. So yeah, I'm glad that they're, and you kind of saw it as the season went on. The first 5-6 games, Vance Joseph was trying to do a lot of that old Vic Fangio stuff. He's trying to mix the two, and it just wasn't going well. It's kind of like when Peyton Manning and Kubiak. Kubiak tried to do a partial Peyton Manning offense, but still wanted to do his own thing. It did not look good in 2015. He probably should have just said, Peyton Manning, it's you. This is your last year. You do what you want to do. I'm going to have to be okay taking that back seat. Now, obviously, still worked out great because he had that incredible defense. But yeah, so I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm still nervous, the talent-wise. I mean, we're going to talk about that a little bit today. If you want to be an aggressive defense, it usually takes a lot of talent to make that work. Otherwise, you're giving up some really big plays that can cost you a game. So it goes both ways. You could have a lot of turnovers, but you could also give up those big plays and lose some games that you probably shouldn't lose.
It's always the double-edged sword, right? You press too much, you leave yourself vulnerable on the back end, but you also might be able to make splash plays, turnovers, sacks, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if the Broncos were a little bit deeper in the secondary and you had a little bit more of a known thing at cornerback too, you have Surtain there. I mean, he's great, but if you're going to be blitzing more, being more aggressive up front, it puts more stress on the back end, and you need more talent on the back end to compensate. It's bodies versus talent kind of argument there. And right now, according to PFF, Denver may have to be a blitzing team because they are ranked 31st, second to worst defensive line in all of football entering the season, according to PFF. We will see if that holds. We'll read it in a bit. Chase coming in here, BTB, great to see you. We have Ernie Mays saying, go Broncos. Yeah, Colin talking about fireworks too. I mean, poor dogs, the fireworks, and I mean, veterans with PTSD. It's, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. I get, lighting them, but be smart. James Richard in the house says Broncos, when you have 3 different owners that cannot tell you there's a problem right there. Thanks, James. I don't know what that means, but good to see you. Got already Michael already. Joel's in the house. 17-0 is crazy, but I think the 5.5 for the over-under is downright disrespectful for a Peyton-led team. We'll see. What were they last year? 8 wins? Was that
8 and 9? Yeah.
9. If you want to smash the over for the 5-5, that's fine. I mean, Denver has some question marks. You lost probably 2 of your 3 best players in your back 7. You lost Judy. Is Judy going to be a loss for them? I mean, I don't know. You have questions there for sure. 5-5. Right now, I probably have Denver at 4 to 6 wins, so 5.5 is pretty good. But we'll see. The other thing about disrespecting Peyton is that it's kind of like Bill Belichick, right? Like, he's had a long career of being a head coach, but he had Drew Brees for 90% of it. Once you take away the Hall of Fame quarterback, things don't look the same for your coaches. It's a player-driven league. It's a quarterback-driven league. So we'll see. But I hope you're right, Cole. I'm very much more biding my time and a little bit more patient before saying that's totally disrespectful, but I hope you're right.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you did get to see him at least for a couple of years without Drew Brees, and his team was still able to win at least 7 games. Like, his worst season is 7 wins as a head coach. Even this last year where everybody was like, oh my gosh, he's walking into this horrible roster. Russell Wilson is completely done. Still found a way to get to 8 wins. You could say some of it was smoke and mirrors with some of the turnovers and things like that, but there's also some losses there that were kind of some fluky losses. Like, I mean, they lost to, 3 of the teams that were in the top 5 for the draft.
Yep.
So, so there again, I mean, I think I get it. A lot of people are, especially national media, are down on this roster. They're just looking at the talent and going, I don't see that top end talent. A lot of these teams, they have those, household names that everybody knows around the country. The Broncos have Patrick Surtain. That's about it. Bo Nix is known because of his college days, but it's not because of what he's done in the NFL. The next best player for the Broncos is probably Quinn Miners. But guards aren't usually a household name. So I think that's kind of what they're looking at. And, some others might be looking at it and going, the Broncos they don't have the top end talent, but they're a sum of all the parts together. If they can get great coaching and get the most out of those players, then maybe they could be a little bit more than what the national media people are thinking.
Yeah, I definitely think it's easier to do that on offense versus defense. I think there's a point where you just have to have the horses on the defense, especially up front. Not that you were saying defense or offense, but we'll see. We got Phil coming in, says, good evening, Nick and Carl. Give me one guy on each side that could be a Pro Bowler this year. Buckham, MHH for life, and Broncos for life. I mean, Quinn Miners stands out. He might still be a year off because a lot of times there's a little delay. Like, once a guy gets a huge contract, oh, we better pay attention to that guy. Oh, yeah, he's worth it. So he's one who stands out. I mean, Pro Bowl is kind of a little bit silly, right? The voting and aspect of that as well. So I guess maybe you give a shout out to Cortland Sutton / Garrett Bowles as well, the veterans of the team. On defense, I mean, it's easy to say Surtain. Maybe Zach Allen could be a guy, but there's a lot of talented interior defensive linemen that are higher pedigree Q rating, as Scott likes to say, that stand out. But those are the guys that I think are the obvious choices.
Yeah, I'll give a quick shout out to Jaquan McMillan, just because he was so great at forcing turnovers last year. And a lot of times, especially for secondary, that seems to be a really big part of people voting for them, is if they can force those turnovers. So and like I said, those can kind of come and go, but he does seem to have a knack for wanting to try to hit that ball out to force a fumble. He's a very aggressive player. He's very confident in what he can do on the field, which later in the season cost him a couple times because he guessed wrong and got beat over the top. But I could maybe see him being one of those guys that forces 6-7 turnovers this year, fumbles and interceptions combined, and all of a sudden he gets some votes and gets into the Pro Bowl. Just because slot corner, it seems to change quite a bit as every season goes on. Offensively, yeah, I think you listed most. Quinn Miners getting his first one, I think could be a pretty good bet for this year. I guess Marvin Mims already got his for a special team, so probably not going to rely on him for that. I guess we could go special teams there. Has Will Lutz made Pro Bowl?
Oh man,
I can't remember. If he hasn't made it, he could make it. I mean, he's a pretty good kicker. Has one of those great seasons where he just
Pro Bowl in 2019.
Okay. Well, never mind on that then. So yeah, I think, like you said, you listed most of them there that I think really stand a decent chance.
Yeah. Also, some good health news here. He says Michael's dad's home. Says recovering from pneumonia. You wrote ammonia there, but I know what you mean there, Michael. So glad to hear. Sending good vibes to you too. Thank you for the stars there, Phil. We got Adam Strange in the house. Hope you're doing well. Great to see a Pearl Heater in here. Awesome to see. And Mile High salute. Everybody doing tonight. Everybody is doing tonight. Hope you're doing well. We got to talk about the defensive line here. Unfortunately, according to PFF, Denver's defensive line is pretty poor. That said, I do think they are more talented than they were last season. So I think the upside is a little higher than PFF is letting on. But what they say is that the Jets felt that John Franklin Myers was expendable, but he may walk onto the Broncos as their best defensive lineman. Nothing better illustrates the gulf between the top and the bottom of these rankings, and the Jets are number one. Spoiler alert there. Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, and Jonathan Cooper have all flashed pressure from the edge, but none has remained consistent. Zach Allen is solid, but not the players the Broncos paid for, and rookie Jonah Ellis could force his way into the reckoning sooner rather than later. So a little summary there of the Broncos defensive line. I think I would disagree. I think Zach Allen has been fine for what he's getting paid compared to what the defensive line market is. I don't think that John Franklin Myers will be their best player. I think that's probably Zach Allen on there. And I agree about the edge rusher. They've been in the edge rushing group. They can be inconsistent. It's a bunch of fine players, but they don't really have star different athletes that have like a gravity to them anywhere on the defensive line, but especially at edge. So 31st, I mean, who's ranked? The team ranked worse than them is the Cardinals. Above them, you have the Vikings, then the Panthers, then the Falcons, then the Bears, then the Jags, then the Dolphins, then the Saints. I don't think you're going to see Denver this season be anywhere. Like, it would be a shock to me if they finish like the 16th best defensive line. But second to last, I'll be wait and see on that one. I just think the depth is better this season, and hopefully the sum of the parts there is solid.
Right. Well, and they didn't even list DJ Jones on that list. I know he had a down year, so I get why he's kind of an afterthought at this point. But I think he can have a decent bounce back season. They signed Malcolm Roach as well to add to that depth. Elijah Garcia had his flashes, especially in preseason last year. Maybe he takes that next step up for him. I know we've got some news that we're going to talk about for the defensive line coming up here in just a second. That could make or break some of that depth for them. But then, yeah, like you look at the edge group, it's not great, but it's each of them are solid. Like I could see a combination of 4 different guys being the starter. They're at the edge position and feeling okay with it. Like not being upset and being like, oh my gosh, that guy should not be a starter. Now, yeah, you're right. They're not top end talent. They're not going to be the double-digit sack guys every single season. Maybe Nick Bonito, just because he has that first step quickness to get around the corner and bend. But still, having those guys where you can have some decent depth, keep them fresh on the field. Now you added Jonah Ellis to the group. It's going to be interesting to see how they use him this season. I think it's, like you said, it's going to be a solid group. It's not going to be an elite group, but I think they can hold their own. I think they can definitely be a huge step up from what they were last year. Now, because they were dead last year in what they brought to the table, in my opinion. I mean, giving
Close.
up.
Yeah.
Or yeah, at least it was close. It was bad. As a pass rushing unit and as a run stopping unit, they just both areas were bad last year. So it's easy to see that they're going to be a step up from what they were. Just how far up are they going to get? If they can get to, like you said, around 16, 17, this could be an okay defense. If they're 25 or worse, it could be a long season where the offense is really having to carry this team, and Bo Nix is put in some difficult situations just because they're going to have to throw.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. And unfortunately for the Broncos, defensive line, I would argue, is the most important area of the defense. And I would argue the second most important unit on a football team, quarterback being number one, then defensive line, then offensive line, in my opinion. But Denver has the second worst ranked defensive line. Denver's offense, the rest of the area, though, not great either. Unfortunately, you have the linebacker room for the Broncos. They are ranked 28th in the NFL. They even mentioned Drew Sanders being a wild card for them that could raise the ceiling of the group. And I mean, will we even see him this season? In the secondary, fortunately for Denver, because of Patrick Surtain, is ranked 16th. So, hey, we got one in the top half, according to PFF. But talent-wise, it doesn't set up to be a very good defense this year. If they end up anywhere in the advanced metrics, scoring defense, anything like that, in the, I guess, anything better than the 18th ranked defense, I think they did better than what their talent is, and Vance Joseph would deserve another year. I know that 18th isn't what you're striving for, but I just don't think it's an overall very talented group. Things can change, of course, right? We haven't even played any games yet this year. Guys can emerge, but I just don't view it. This is the ramification of losing draft picks, dead cap, missing on guys being hurt, et cetera, and guys being suspended that we still have questions with. And we'll get into that in just a second, but want to say hello to some folks coming in. We got Northcutt Production says much higher. Yeah, he says Denver should be much higher. Todd's in the house. Great to see you. MBLEX Test Prep says he's here to party. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We also have, Roy says defense will not be an elite group with VJ coaching. Here's a question for you, Roy, in the chat as well. Is there a coach out there that would get elite play from the defense? I just don't think they have the talent. I mean, purely. I mean, you have guys who are great defensive coordinators when they have great talent, but it's hard to hide talent, especially on the defensive line, or the lack of talent.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I look at like Wade Phillips when he was with Denver. He walked into the perfect situation. You got Von Miller in his prime, DeMarcus Ware. You've got a secondary with Aqib Talib, Chris Harris Jr., TJ Ward. Yeah. Then your backups would be starters on some other teams for that unit. It was crazy. And I get, like, everybody loves Wade for what he was able to do and how he was able to produce that defense. But he walked into a great situation, and now he maximized his opportunity with that group and really put them in the best position to be successful. But I've also seen part of the reason that Wade Phillips is not in the NFL right now is because he's had other times where he didn't have as much talent and he struggled to have his defense be able to play at the level that it did. And so I see a few people throwing out the name like Dennis Allen. If he was available, I think a lot of people would be excited to see him come back to Denver and what he could do with this type of talent, or lack of talent, I guess you could say. Jim Leonard is another one. I'm excited, but we don't know. He's done it at the college level, but it's a whole different game stepping up to the NFL level. It's so much more exotic in what you're asking for those players to do. So right now, VJ, he's not my favorite guy by any means, but it'd be interesting to see, if you talk to national media people, where would they rank him as a defensive coordinator?
Probably
I don't know. That's 20th. Probably where I'd have him too. Yeah.
Somewhere like 16 to 22, which is not great, but not, garbage fire. We saw garbage fire last year, but I still think it's guys missing assignments and just getting beaten one-on-ones. You can't scheme. You can scheme a guy to, it's kind of like basketball, right? You scheme a guy open, but if he can't shoot, what are you going to do? So I think that was a lot of issues last year at the defensive line, and the linebacker group as well when Jewell was out. But we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens. And Mile High Salute says, "Can I ask a serious question? When did PFF ever get anything right?" Starlight Nick, right? The crap is wrong all the time. Anybody doing predictions is going to be wrong a lot. I think it's more interesting to talk when you have like a linear ranking like that. What's the ballpark? If Denver finishes with a bottom 8 defensive line and sacks and other metrics that are not just purely the PFF grades, because that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, then I would say they're right. But is Denver going to finish the 31st ranked specifically? Probably not. It's the neighborhood, right? You want to get the guys in the right neighborhood when you're trying to project. But we'll see. What I want to talk about now is what could happen to really skyrocket this group up out of 31 overall and prove PFF wrong. Who are the guys who could step up that, make you optimistic and like, oh, wow, well, this isn't an elite unit, but we got something cooking here. It's not nearly as bad as I expected.
I think, Baron Browning, I think, is the one guy that can really take this group to a different level. He showed for a few games last year when he came back from injury, he looked pretty darn good. Like he had some plays where he was just disruptive. I mean, he was in the backfield quickly, made teams have to adjust to him. It just, as the season progressed, he just struggled to stay at that kind of level. And so I think if he could prove to become that top guy in that room for them as both a run and pass defender, I think he could be that guy that really elevates them into the top half of the league. Nick Bonito is another one just because he has that elite first step. He's a guy that can really turn a game. We saw it in the Chicago game where he got the sack fumble that led to a touchdown. Really got them back in that one. At that point, like we're kind of going, oh crap, Broncos might be the worst team in football when they're losing to the Chicago Bears by a couple touchdowns at that point. And all of a sudden he has one play, boom, turns it around. And so, like I said, I think those are the two guys that really, if they could take that next step in their development, could really turn people's thoughts on this kind of unit from 31st to, oh, they're pretty darn good. Team's got to actually worry about them.
Yeah, I'm good calls out there. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Nick Bonito taking a step forward. Maybe Ellis is the dude. I know he had injuries last season, ended quickly, but really productive. And we'll see with him. And also, hopefully, a DJ Jones bounce back. You also have the wild card, which is Uwazurike. And news today that Mike Kliss reported that there's been some complications in getting him reinstated. The reason is because how the state of Iowa collected evidence was illegal in the gambling probe in the state. That is a whole Charlie Foxtrot in itself. But state of Iowa, pretty embarrassing how they handled that. A lot of things going on. Iowa's crazy, but Iowa court suppressed all evidence they seized, finding because it was taken illegally. The ruling is binding on the Colorado courts and prosecutors. It would be difficult, if not impossible, to prosecute a case in Colorado and all charges were dismissed in Iowa. So that's kind of slowing things down. A lot of times players will ask to be reinstated and they'll get reinstated the same day. But because of that, it's been pretty slow. And what happened with Uwazurike? He was accused of placing 32 bets on 5 Broncos games and also some betting while he played at Iowa State as well. But how everything was gathered and everything was found to be illegal. So it's dropped right now. And sounds like everything's going to be dismissed in Iowa, which probably means good stuff for Uwazurike, big picture. But it means everything's slowed, right? We're just kind of in a wait and see like what's going on here with the bureaucratic glacial pace that you have going on with the judicial system.
Do you remember what is the official date he could be reinstated? I know it's sometime here in July.
I want to say it was like the start of training camp.
Okay.
I thought it's like whenever that starts, it's like officially the new league year, I think, or the new player calendar year. But I want to say it's whenever training camp starts.
Okay. Yeah. And he could be that, like I said, that huge addition if he has stayed in shape. I remember when he was drafted, we were doing our live draft show. Quite a few of us were very excited about what he could bring to the table. He's long, he's strong, he's got some moves to his game. His rookie season, he had a couple plays that flashed all of those kind of things. It wasn't a great rookie season, but he didn't get many opportunities either. But like I said, there's just those few plays that you're going, oh, there's not many other guys on this team that can move like that or that can handle a guy like that in the trenches. So, he is another one. Like I said, if all those things kind of line up and he can get back out there and maybe have that, I need to redeem myself for what I've done. This has been a very embarrassing situation, I'm sure, for him for the last year to go through this, to be away from football. And for him to get another opportunity, sometimes that is a huge motivator for guys. Some other guys, they're just like, I don't care. I'm just going to do what I want to do. But for sure, I think he could be a huge difference maker that they don't have on that defensive line right now.
It would be great for Denver, of course. Also news with Uwazurike. He has been attending a once-a-week Gamblers Anonymous meetings the past year, which Scott made the joke before the show, not very anonymous of them to announce that, but I digress. Also, he's been attending therapy sessions once a week, apart from the Gamblers Anonymous meeting. So doing the work, the growth, very hopeful that he can come back. I know that we were pretty excited when Denver got him. Not an explosive guy, but a lot of length, pretty good plug, good size, some versatility inside, outside, played for a good Iowa State defense. That hurts me to say. But Uwazurike back would be great. Just depth, getting a second line guy, because right now your second group on the defensive line is questionable. I mean, your starters probably, you have 4 guys who are going to get the majority of the snaps in Allen, John Franklin Myers, and DJ Jones, and Malcolm Roach. But after that, I mean, it's up for grabs totally. So if Uwazurike could come be a 5th guy, maybe even challenge somebody there, knock on wood, but an injury could happen. It'd be great. The other thing that's interesting about Uwazurike, last year didn't count for his contract. So you still have 3 years of control with him. I know he was a little bit older when he was drafted, but having 3 years is good, of course. Unfortunate for him because he can't get to free agency sooner if he blows up. But hopefully he can become a solid contributor for the next 3 years for Denver.
Yeah, that's obviously that's the hope with him. Because Broncos need some of those really cheap contracts for the next couple of years. They're going to have to pay Surtain. They're going to have to pay Quinn Miners. Not having those draft picks these last couple of years, having a guy that almost is like an extra free pick coming back for your team would be huge. Like I said, and if he can be an actual playmaker, not just a guy that makes the roster, I think something that can maybe shock this team into, like I said, a place that most people didn't expect. Because having those interior defensive line that can be disruptive, especially in the pass game, it's hard to find. I mean, every team is looking for him. We've seen the last couple of drafts. There hasn't been a ton of great defensive linemen, especially getting after the quarterback. I think this next draft will be really good, the way it's looking. I mean, we'll get into that conversation more as the season progresses. And I do think that's an area the Broncos will be looking pretty hard at early in the draft next year. But like I said, just having that kind of guy, and then you can pair him up with some other people and having Allen not have all the pressure on him, having other talent around him to take take blocks off of him. Again, that's just another thing that helps other players down the road. Each player kind of moves another spot just because of that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Unfortunately for Denver, based on, like you mentioned, the 2025 class. Now, if Bo Nix is the guy, I don't think Denver's going to be hunting for quarterback in the next draft. Doesn't look like a great class. Beck stands out, then it's a bunch of others, question marks for me. Sorry, CU fans. I think Schroeder's fine, but I don't think he's number 1 overall conversation. But you have a lot of defensive linemen. It's edge and interior defensive line. So Denver will probably be hunting, and it's hard to say what a Sean Payton team will do because circumstances have changed so much. But with the Saints, I would have imagined they used more first-round picks on the defensive line than any other spot on the roster. They did this, a lot of edge rushers, a lot of interior guys as well, but a lot of first-round picks on the defensive line, even some of those hybrid inside-outside guys. I mean, trading a future first-round pick to go get Marcus Davenport, a pass rusher out there. So they took a lot of guys on that defensive line. So I think defensive line, even if they do finish second worst this season, I think odds are pretty good. That's an area where Denver will be looking to spend their first-round pick next season, and it looks to be a pretty darn good season for that.
Yeah, you're right. He definitely is huge on the defensive line. He definitely wants to see that unit strong. He knows how important it is having a quarterback that can attack a defense, but also having a defense that can attack a quarterback. He knows football. I mean, and that's pretty simple stuff. I mean, that doesn't take a rocket science to know. You got to stop a quarterback and you got to be able to get past the defense with a quarterback. So I definitely think that would be a direction. If I was a betting man today in July 2nd, saying where are the Broncos going in next year's draft, it would be defensive line, edge or interior. I'm not going to place my bet on which one it'll be. I kind of lean probably towards edge.
Yeah.
just because you got Baron Browning, you got a couple other guys that are going to be leaving here pretty soon. Where the defensive line, you've got some guys signed long-term, long-term, I say, for at least the next couple of years. So that'd probably be the way I'd lean. But we have Pearl Heater coming in. How about finally drafting some tackles? Yeah, it's been a while for sure. How many years? I guess it's been since Garrett Bowles that they've drafted a tackle in the draft.
Yep. I mean, they technically took one the next season with Dalton Reisner, who played tackle at college, but immediately moved inside. So they got him actually, but offensive tackle class doesn't look as good next year, but it's definitely on the table. We'll see what happens with Garrett Bowles. But guys, we're going to shut it down here. Everybody enjoy their weekend. I know it's been 35 short episode, but things are slow. I got the mother-in-law in town, and so I'm going to go hang out with some family. And Carl, what are your plans on the 4th? You doing anything fun? And we're going to have pretty low key, and I'm hopefully going to get out and do a training hike and a quick backpacking trip next week. So I'll be gone Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. But what are you doing? You going to get out there and do some more training? What's going on?
Well, yeah, of course I got to get the training in because I'm going to be gone all next week for a trip to Denver. So it'll be interesting to see how I get my training in during that time. But no, I think for the 4th, we've got a couple different friends. I got a friend about an hour away that invited the family out for shooting off some fireworks with his kids. Got another family here in town that wants to hang out. So I guess just trying to weigh the options and see which one's best for us, because this is kind of like our 1 week as a family that we're actually here together in town at home. And it's kind of been nice just to relax a little bit because summer gets crazy. You'll figure that out as your kids get older. Summer is not this time off. You think, hey, they're out of school, they get to hang out. It is not that.
Well, we'll enjoy the moments right now. He's not moving around too much yet, so I'm trying to enjoy, especially this is my last 2 weeks before I'm back at work. Then I'm going to take a week off, family out in town, and then going to Whitney, but that's okay. I already cleared it with work. We're good. But appreciate everyone. Make sure you're following Carl and I on Twitter. Carl's at Carl Dumler, MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you guys are following us at Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. As that ticker says there underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube today, that's the #1 spot to watch and support. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle on there. Like the show and share on your social media platforms. That's always really greatly appreciated. Shout out to the star givers today, David Mickelrath, Michael Ronquillo, Phil McLaughlin. Also, shout out to David Youngkin, again, always coming in and supporting. Thought maybe last Wednesday morning, one of the shows recently was going to be the last one we'd be hanging out with you. But just know, you're always welcome. And really good luck with everything happening for you this weekend. And everybody be smart. Don't set any flipping wildfires. Otherwise, I will come find you. A lot of fun, Carl. We'll talk again soon. Everyone continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.